It's 1933, and a doctor and a nurse are delivering a baby. And the doctor tells the nurse, Ann, he says, Ann, this baby will be stillborn. The mother has been very ill, and the baby is not going to survive. When the baby is delivered, he hands the baby to the nurse and says, Ann, put the baby on the table over there, and then come back and help me. We've got to try and save this mother. They worked for 2 hours, but the mother died. This baby is still alive. He says, it can't be. He said, it only weighs 2 or 3 pounds. The lungs are developed. He said, it's not going to survive. She says, Doctor, I'm going to take this baby home. He says, Ann, you don't want to do that. You'll get attached to it and it's going to die and you're going to be devastated. Leave it on the table there. I'll take care of it. She
Wow.
said, I'm taking it home. And she grabbed the baby and went out the door.
What if success wasn't measured by what you accumulated, but by who still answers your phone call? What if the most important lessons about business, leadership, marriage, family, and life aren't learned in our 20s, but finally understood after 90 years of living? Today's conversation is about getting somewhere faster. It's about making sure we're headed in the right direction. Let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of the Perpetual Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Palmer. Around here, we spend a lot of time talking about growth in business, health, wealth, relationships, leadership. But every once in a while, you get the opportunity to sit down with someone whose life itself becomes the lesson. Today's guest is James or Jim Paulk Jr. Jim is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy, a former naval officer, a longtime manufacturing executive with Procter & Gamble, and perhaps most remarkably, someone who didn't begin writing books until his 80s. Now in his 90s, he has authored multiple books and recently released How I Found Love, a collection of authentic stories exploring the surprising ways people find connection throughout life. Today's conversation isn't just about romance. It's about purpose, relationships, reinvention, family, storytelling, and what nearly a century of life can teach all of us. Jim, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Zach. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to dive in today, Jim. Jim, you've lived through wars, raised a family, built a career, served your country, and now you've become an author later in life. I mean, when you look back over more than 90 years, what surprises you most about life?
Well, right now I'm surprising that I'm writing books because I'm a terrible writer. I'm a better talker than I am a writer. And if you told me 30, 40 years ago that I'd be writing books, I'd say you're crazy because I couldn't do it. But you know, Zach, I've found that life is an evolutionary process, and I like the words you used of purpose and relationships because those are two of the most important things. And I think sometimes people forget that they do have a purpose, and they need to recognize that do have a purpose in life and know where they are and then know where they're going, at least not every step of the way, but a step in the right direction, and then you figure it out where you're going to go. But there is absolutely nothing in life more important than relationships, and I can say that I don't think I have ever accomplished anything of significance by myself. Everything that I've been involved in life that's been successful has been with a group of people.
Yeah.
And I just I approach life as being fearless. I'm never afraid to take on something because I know that it's not going to be by myself. I know it's going to be with others, and I
Yeah.
trust others. And I think that's probably a good way to go. That removes the fear part of it because you know that it's not all on you.
I wholeheartedly agree, Jim. I mean, it's like when my mentors always used to say, proximity is power. And I think it's equally as important to be mindful of who we surround ourselves with, because that old adage, our life is the sum total of the 5 people we spend the most time with. The older I get, the more truth I find in that message. So choose wisely. And I also love that you speak about, one, we got to have clarity and direction. And at the same time, we have to give ourselves a bit of grace while we're finding that direction, because it's not like we just, most people graduate high school and wait till go to school, get a good job, start a family, buy a house, and everybody has a different way of finding that real calling, that passion and purpose. I wholeheartedly agree. We all have a purpose, but it's our responsibility to figure out what that purpose is, and that's part of what the journey of life is. Tell us about growing up, Jim. I mean, the Naval Academy, military service, leaving the military, building a corporate career. I mean, those are major identity shifts going from the military world to the civilian world. I mean, what shaped you into the man you became today?
Well, let me just tell you that when I was born, we lived 10 miles out in the country. We did not have a car. My
Wow.
father drove a pulpwood truck. And if my mother wanted to go to school, go to town for groceries, she had to flag down the train and then get another train back. And we
Wow.
moved we moved to town when I was 4 years old so that I could go to school. But that's the way I started out, is just living way out in the country. And we had and it was in the depths of the Great Depression. I was born in 1933, and things were
Wow.
really, really bad at that time.
Wow.
But going through the depression where money was very hard to come by, and you had to either raise your food, or you had to go hunting and get your own meat, because that's basically what we did and how we survived. And then we moved to town, and went to kindergarten, and graduated from school with almost the same people I started kindergarten with. So it was the same group of people, and we basically grew up outside playing sports and going hunting, going fishing, and camping, and just doing boy things, getting into a little trouble every now and then, and just having a good time. And I'll tell you, I'm still in contact with a lot of my high school friends, and
Yeah.
two of them came up to Pennsylvania to be in my wedding when my wife got married. And I would say that the person that had the most influence on me was my wife. She was the most incredible person that I have ever known, and she made me a better person, not because she tried to, but just by example. She was absolutely perfect inside and out. She was an unbelievable person, and I just can't believe that I was married to someone like her for 60 years before I lost her. But I think you're exactly right. And over the years, I had several teachers that were unbelievable and mentored me. And the people in town got behind me and helped me get my appointment to Annapolis. And I just and those relationships that I created as a child made a difference in me, because everything that I have in life is because I went to Annapolis. It's absolutely a great, great school. And I'll tell you, the first night that I got there in 1953, everyone was running around. Where you from? What do you do? And it seems like that everyone I met had graduated valedictorian from high school. They were president of their class, and they were captain of the football team. And I'm thinking, I was none of those things. What in the world am I doing here? And I was in awe of my classmates. And then later in life, much later in life, in the 80s, I started. When I did my first book, everybody wanted me to do another book. And I said, they tricked me into doing one. And I said, I didn't plan to do another one. But I did a second book of stories about my Naval Academy classmates, not boring bios, but significant things. One of my classmates was the architect of GPS, and that is worldwide
Wow.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
What a contribution to mankind. I
Yeah.
had another classmate that was Apollo 16 that spent 3 days on the moon. That was Charlie Duke.
Wow.
I had
Wow.
a I had a classmate that spent 27 years as an official in NFL and refereed three Super Bowls, and that was Bob
Wow.
McElwee. And
Yeah.
if you look at the book, there's a picture of him with his hands up at an official signaling touchdown, and you're going to say, "Oh, I remember him." Yeah, he
Yeah.
was, but he had some great stories, and he was one of the first guys that called me when I announced my class. I plan to do the book. He said, "Jimmy, do you want some stories from the NFL?" I said, "Oh, I'd love them." And his
Mhm.
stories are unbelievable. And
Yeah.
but my classmates just cooperated. No one said, "Who are you to write this book?"
Hmm.
And but I just decided that it was something that needed to be done. And the Alumni Association said it's the only book in the history of the Naval Academy since 1845. 80 stories by 59 different authors in it. Other books
Wow.
are and movies have been made, but they're made about one person and their
Yeah.
life and what they experienced. But ours is many, many stories. There were two that were children that during the attack, Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. One was a little girl. The father was out at sea on a destroyer as a gunnery officer with Halsey's carriers. The other
Hmm.
was standing out by the curb, waiting for the bus to pick him up to take to Sunday school. And his father was in the army and was stationed at the air base there. And the Japanese planes were flying right over his head, shooting planes at the airport and the hangars and everything. And he said he was walking around picking up empty cartridges falling out of the planes. But these stories are unbelievable. There's one that was from Poland, and he was Jewish. And the Nazis loaded his family on boxcars. And when he got off the boxcars in Auschwitz, the Nazis executed his mother and his sister immediately. And his father was sent to a work camp, and he stayed there doing chores. And he didn't see his father for 2 years after the war before they were able to get back together again. But these
Wow.
stories, there are several stories in that book that would make tremendous movies and whatever. And it's a pretty interesting book. That's called Shaking Up the World. And
Mm.
I picked that name because these guys really did shake up the world with what they did and their contributions to
Yeah.
mankind. And then I started reflecting on the main thing out of all of this, and it was relationships. And
Mm.
of course, love is the ultimate relationship.
Hmm.
And this book that we just published last month, How I Found Love, has got unbelievable ways that people met someone. And I could tell some stories if you want to, but
Hmm.
it was so important to me in relationships all through life that I felt like I needed to develop that subject because I don't know how, if it's been dealt with, but I wanted to deal with it and I wanted to
Hmm.
leave some legacy and maybe an inspiration for people that haven't found love, and maybe it'll help encourage them to be ready. And that's what I say. It's a Boy Scout motto is be prepared, but be ready because you never know when you're going to meet that person that's going to have, as you said, a big influence on your life.
Hmm.
And you want to be associated with people that are going to help you grow as an individual and be a better individual.
Yeah. I completely agree, Jim. I mean, one of the well, majority of my mentors have all mirrored the same fundamental life philosophy that, it's not only the quality of our relationships and who we surround ourselves with, but the number one most important relationship decision that we can make above all is who we marry and who we choose to spend our lives with. And what I'm really curious about, I mean, there's so much I would love to unpack from your, incredible history and time on this planet. I mean, I'd love to go back to the beginning, but I really want to focus on what you were just discussing around the book. I mean, around stories of how I found love, and tell me, like, why collect other people's stories instead of just simply telling your own? I mean, what was the big driver, the opportunity that you saw in that?
Zach, I always feel like other people are more important than I am.
Yeah.
I feel like I need other people a lot more than they need me. And one of the reviews in my first book said Jim always talks about other people. He doesn't talk about himself. And I thought about it, and I said, I think that's right because all the people that I met that first night at Annapolis that were so impressive. And I was just little Jimmy Paulk from Brunswick, Georgia, a little town on the coast of Georgia. I'm just almost nothing, and compared to others. And I'm interested in other people, and I'm
Hmm.
interested in what they accomplish, and I absolutely love to tell their stories. And if you want, I could talk about how I met my wife and talk about her a little bit if you wanted me to.
Oh, I'd love you to. I mean, and I'm really curious about that, Jim. I mean, one, you had 60 years with your wife, which especially in today's world, and I hate to say it, but unfortunately is a tremendous accomplishment. And not only that, you can hear the passion and love that you guys had and shared just through the brief introduction and conversation we've had thus far. So I would love to have you expand upon your relationship with your wife. And in parallel, what I would love to hear is, what did you learn after reading and writing hundreds of stories about how people found love? I mean, talk about your personal experience and then, what you saw through and learned through interviewing so many others.
I tell you, Zach, I had a girlfriend from the time I was 15 in high school, a steady girlfriend. And went together for 2 years, and then I had a succession after that. The second one I had in high school, uh, and she was Charlotte O'Hara. She was the Southern, black hair, blue eyes, gorgeous. And she told me after a few months we going together, she said, Jimmy, I'm not going to hang around 4 years for you to go to Annapolis to get married. She says, I'm going to Georgia and find me a husband. And I said, that sounds like a good goal. And then many years later, somebody told me that she had found four of them. So I said, I guess I dodged a bullet with
Yeah.
that one. But my second year at Annapolis, my Georgia girlfriend, I couldn't get her to come up for a dance or anything, and she decided that seeing me for a few days at Christmas and a week or two in the summertime, during my 30 days vacation was not much relationship. So she ended that one. And then a friend invited me to go over to the University of Delaware for 3 days weekends. And his girlfriend fixed me up with three blind dates. Well, I'm sure the first two were wonderful. But when I met Pat on that third date, I had never met anyone like her. And I probably had five or six girlfriends over the years. And I had never met anyone like her. She seemed to have an aura about her that reached out 5 feet away from her body. She was just unbelievable person. And I said, wow, I've got to get to know her a lot better. And so I said, I've got to get her to come down to Annapolis. And a lot of telephone calls and a lot of letters and whatever. And I finally persuaded her to come down. She had her life pretty well planned, and it had absolutely nothing to do with being a military wife. That wasn't going to fit. So I really had a chore there, but I was not going to let her get away because she was too precious. And she came down, and I know she didn't think that she was going to recognize me. And so we were going to meet on the steps of Bancroft Hall at 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, which gave her time to get the train down from Newark to Baltimore and a bus over from Baltimore to Annapolis. And so at 2 o'clock, I went to the steps, and all these midshipmen, I'm sure we all looked alike in our uniforms and everything. So she's sitting on the steps, and I looked over and I saw this beautiful girl sitting there, and she had a sweatshirt on with Delaware across the front so that I'd recognize her because she wasn't sure she'd recognize me. We both smiled at each other, and I think our souls kind of met at that point. Later found out that she was the most popular girl on the campus of the University of Delaware. And before I went over there, she had just broken up with the captain of the Delaware basketball team. Uh, and I don't know what I ever did to attract her, but I'm darn glad I did because she was so special. And I'll just tell you one story about her. She attracted everybody, and if we went out to dinner at a nice restaurant in Newport Beach, California, people would stare at her thinking she was a movie star because there were always movie stars in Southern California. You never knew you were going to run into one at the grocery store or whatever. And I'd be outside waiting for my car, and somebody walk up and said, "Who are you with tonight?" I said, "That's my wife, Pat." And he said, "Oh, they thought she was Doris Day or Elizabeth Montgomery or some actress, She was beautiful, and yet she was like the girl next door.
Yeah.
She did not, when she dressed up, she looked good, but there's a picture I put in the, and we had a boat in California, and my passion in life was fishing. I could
Mhm.
talk fishing forever, but we'd been out marlin fishing during the day, and we were back on our mooring at Catalina Island, at 26 miles off the coast of Southern
Mhm.
California,
Mhm.
and I'm sitting there, I got my feet up, having something to drink, and she's standing there barefooted with shorts and a t-shirt on, and she's got a hand on my shoulder. And I asked my publisher, would you put that in the book? She says, no way. She says, you're going to put me in a book unless I am fixed up the best I can be. But I asked my kids, so what do you think? She said, that's mom. Put her in there. And so she's in the book because she was very comfortable in her own skin,
Yeah.
and just a regular person. But at one and I could tell you a million stories about her, but there's one here that I think you'll enjoy. Do you know the singing group The Platters?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay. Well, we had agreed to meet in Branson, Missouri. We did go to all the shows there for a week. And Pat's roommate Nancy and her husband John were going to drive up to Branson from Houston. It was a 2 day drive, and we were going to fly out to Springfield and get a rent a car and drive over to Branson and for a week. And so we had a wonderful time. Went to shows and everything, and then but we decided that the last day we were there, we would go to an early show, then go get dinner, have dinner, and then go back to the room and pack because they had the 2 day drive and they were going to take all the food and everything that's left over. So after dinner at the Cracker Barrel, John and I came out and sat in the rocking chairs on the porch, and the women were walking around inside in the gift shop. Two guys came out the door, and I heard one of them say, let's play a couple of games of checkers before we go. And I stood up and I said, hey, there's a checkerboard right here. Take my chair. And I said, wait a minute. How are you going to play checkers with him? He's got a white cane and a red tip on it. I said, I'm going to have to referee this match. And so we got in this little thing back and forth. And Pat's roommate, Nancy, came out of the door. She said, you know who these guys are? I said, I don't have a clue. She says, they're the Platters. I said, oh, my word. I love their music. Their song "Only You" is my favorite song. And Rooster, who was the leader of the group, said, "Have you been to a show?" I said, "No, Rooster, we haven't been to the show. We haven't been able to this week." He said, "You got to come to the show tonight." I said, "Rooster, we got to go back and pack. We both have to get up early in the morning. We have a long trip." He said, "No, you got to come to the show." So we finally agreed. He said, "Give me 15 minutes at will call." So we got to the theater, went to will call, got our tickets, and at Branson, the theaters are huge,
Yeah.
and thousands of people. And so they seat everybody with the ushers. They take your tickets and get everybody seated quickly. So we gave my tickets, and we start walking down, and we kept going and going, and we were in the very front, right in front of
Wow.
the stage. And so the show was terrific. At near the end of the show, Rooster came down off the stage with two long stem red roses. He gave one to Nancy and he gave one to Pat, and he danced with Pat in the aisle there right in front of the stage. And
Wow.
so, and then he went back up, and then they, at the conclusion, they said, "We want everybody to come up to the lobby, take pictures, and get autographs, and we'll have fun." And so, I'm thinking, I'm looking back, there ain't no way we could go back up to the lobby, and because we got to go pack and everything. But I noticed there was an exit door next to the stage. I said, I don't see a guard over there. Let's go out that door. So we went out that door, and guess what happened? Here
They're
comes
outside.
Rooster up the sidewalk. Where are you going? I said, Rooster, we got to go pack. He said, no, no, no. You got to come up to the lobby and get autographs and take some pictures. I said, Rooster, there'll be a line a mile long up there. He said, don't worry about the line. And he took Pat by the arm and they went up the sidewalk. And I told John, I said, well, I guess we're going to the lobby. So, but she just had a way of attracting everyone. And
Mhm.
that was just a common thing through life. She served as president of every organization she belonged to. There was a homeowners group with four men, and she was president. And that's just the way that she was. She didn't seek those jobs. Everybody just wanted her to be a leader because of just her personality was and she was probably the most authentic person that I've ever known. I never knew anyone that had the personality that she had. It was
Mm,
unbelievable.
mm,
And I miss her so much.
yeah.
But it's just it's a blessing that I've had that I was being married to someone like her. She definitely made me a better person.
Yeah.
I mean I was ambitious and maybe outwardly too ambitious for some people, but she made me a better person. I'll say that.
That's beautiful, Jim. I mean, 60 years together. What were, I'm sure it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. You had to have every relationship has its challenges. I mean, what were the principles that really made your relationship so successful over that beautiful 60 years?
I think I picked two words. I think one was mutual respect for one another
Mm,
and loyalty and then trust. We absolutely trusted one another. Uh, and it was an equal partnership. I'll say that. We were both leaders, and it could have been a lot of conflict. It could have been competition, but it never was. I was president and chairman of the board of many organizations over the years, and she was too. But we helped one another. Anything she was involved in, I helped with as a helper, and anything that I was involved with, she helped me, and that's just the way it was. I don't know how to describe it any more than that. But we really cared about one another. And
mm,
I know I'd be sitting in my recliner in the family room, and she'd walk in and put her hand on my shoulder. She just had a hand on my shoulder all the time. And I noticed that from pictures. And I don't know whether she was trying to hold me down or what, but she always had a hand on my shoulder, and I miss that. I miss that touch.
mm. It sounds like it. I mean, yeah, the word that came to my mind is integrated. And I think so many relationships are disintegrated because, I'm people by nature tend to focus on themselves. And as opposed to what can I do, that, I mean, the underlying theme and message from you is you guys were so focused on what you could do to support the other that it created that great strength because rising tide lifts all boats. You're continuing lifting each other up and giving the unconditional love and support and demonstrating that trust. And I think that from what I'm hearing, sounds like the real foundation to what created 60 years of joy together.
We really did care about one another
Yeah.
as much or more than we did about ourselves. And I know we would do anything for one another. And
Hmm.
she had pretty tough years at the end. She had some bad back trouble. She was unbelievably a good athlete, which I would never have imagined. And
Hmm.
I tell you, about 25 years after we married, and we lived in Southern California, and we got a phone call, and it was somebody from a high school in Pennsylvania that wanted her to come back to a reunion. And I said, well, she's at a meeting. She was always at a meeting. I was always at meetings.
Hmm.
And I said, she's not here, but I'll have her call you when she gets in. And that's a long way to come for one night reunion, but maybe she'll want to do it. And we talked a little bit, and before we said goodbye, and he said, by the way, her high jump record is still good. And I said, high jump? I didn't even know she did the high jump. 25 years and it's still good. That's pretty darn impressive.
Yeah.
But she did the long jump, she did the high jump, she and the triple jump, and she did the half mile and the quarter mile, and but her main sport was swimming. She was in high school years, their neighborhood swim club had a team, amateur team, and their coach was a fellow by the name of Peter Dalen. You look up Peter Dalen and Google, and you won't believe what you see.
Mm.
He came back from World War II, and on the GI Bill went to Swarthmore, near their home in Pennsylvania, and he coached the neighborhood swim team, and they set some amateur records. He was an incredible coach. He left Swarthmore after he graduated and went to Yale as the assistant swim coach, and from there he went to the University of Southern California as the head coach there, and he won like 9 Division I uh, national championships there. He coached the men's Olympic team when Mark Spitz won 7 gold medals, and
Mm.
he coached the women's Olympic team at another time. And the guy was a mentor for other college coaches and started the swimming magazine. He was unbelievable talent. But she learned swimming and she learned competition from him. She was very competitive, but she always had this beautiful smile on her face. But she was going to whip you with it. She was sitting on the floor playing cards with the girls, and the granddaughters absolutely adored her. You can imagine, and
Yeah.
she'd
Yeah.
sit on the floor and play cards with them. But she wanted to win too. But she
Yeah.
was unbelievable talent, and I think I know she told me she hit the lower board one time doing a dive from the high board, a back dive, and she said he hit the other board, and I think that kind of messed up her back later in years. But she was very athletic. She played basketball. One time, she was going to go down when we first moved to California and pick up our youngest daughter from somebody's playing at somebody's house, and she walked down the sidewalk, and there were 3 boys that were shooting baskets on the back of a garage, and one of them flipped the ball out. Hey, Miss Paulk, take a shot. What do you think? Nothing but net. And then kept walking. Well, one of my buddies happened to be watching out the window and saw that and called me. He said, "You're not gonna believe what I just saw." Those boys were standing there with their mouths open. They couldn't believe that woman had just hit
Yeah,
that
I
shot.
believe it. I believe
But
it.
and she said, I told her about it. She said I could probably never do it again, but maybe not. But
No, that's fair. I mean, Jim, tell me this. I mean, when you think about relationships, I mean, after 90 years, what what actually matters?
I think what matters is as a leader, you have to be authentic, because if you're not, I don't care whether you're an officer in the Navy or whether you're a manager at Procter and Gamble. People know who you are, and I think if they one of the guys that wrote a review on my first book said, Jim doesn't tell people where to go and what to do. He says, let's go. People always knew that I was going to be there, and I knew as a volunteer leader that I had to work harder than anyone else to get help. And we always accomplished things, and we accomplished significant things. I don't particularly like to talk about them, but I will say that after I retired from P&G, I was going to start a consulting company with about 15 other retirees just to do things together, not for money, because most of us were okay financially, but we wanted to continue doing projects together.
Hmm.
And about a year into it, at the end of that, we picked up some fun projects to do, but I had some people that went to the assemblywoman that was sponsoring an initiative to go for the ballot in California. And it had started up and it was not going well. And they went to her and said, we need someone with management experience and someone knows a lot of people in the fishing industry to take over the leadership, because this is going to fail. And she called me and I went and met with her, and she said, we need 600,000 signatures in 5 months. And I said, that is impossible. I said, but I'll tell you what, after we talk, I said, let me go back and talk to the committee I've been meeting with. And if they will agree to help, we'll do it. And so I talked with them and I said, look, there's no way we can get 600,000, but we have to create the perception of success by our activities and what just everything that we do. We got to be everywhere all the time and get money donated so that we can pay professional signature gatherers. We did that. We were everywhere, all over California. We had fishermen everywhere working on this, and we had people that gave us booths at the Orange County Fair south of Los Angeles, hundreds of thousand people, and they gave us a booth right in front of the front gate. And we had posters, we had everything. We were getting signatures, and we got it on the ballot, and it passed. And that was probably one of the most significant things that I've ever been involved in because that was darn near impossible. We won 53 to 47% of the vote, and that's a pretty good vote. But
Yeah.
we eliminated the white sea bass gill nets that were used that were destructive because they caught sharks, they caught porpoise, they caught sea lions, they killed everything, and even fish that you didn't want. So there
Mm,
was a very destructive process. But over we phased those out over 3 years, and that gave us a chance to do some other projects. And after that was over, they asked me to be president of a 501c3 fishing conservation organization, and we built that to being one of the largest ones in the United States. And
wow.
we work with SeaWorld and Department of Fish and Game and industry and a number of organizations and a lot of fishing clubs to raise fish to put back in the ocean. And we raised money to build at that time the most modern fish hatchery in the world. There, you
Wow.
could run it from your phone, and so the guys didn't have to be there on the weekend. They could monitor everything.
Mm,
And we organized boats to go out and catch the mamas and papa fish, and we raised these up and got them into to 4 inches in a raceway outside, and then we delivered them to fishing clubs that had built grow out pens about the size of a boat slip, and they tagged all these fish with a metal tag that showed the dates they were when they were born and when they were and where they were released and so forth, all the data. And so with a magnetometer, if you had the heads of these fish turned in by fishermen, you could get the data, and the data was collected by the department at Northridge University, where they maintained all this. And we had monthly meetings, everybody that was involved in the project. And I read an article not too long ago that 40% of the white sea bass that are caught in Southern California have a tag in them. So that program is working and it's been very successful. But we
oh, it
did
sounds
we
like it.
did we
Yeah.
did other things too, and it was kind of fun thing. But it was all relationships. And what did I
Mhm.
get out of it? It was relationships. I
Yeah.
met people. I had fun. It was just incredible, and we got stuff donated. It was just unbelievable. People came forward because we were real. We weren't faking it, and we were everybody was working hard at whatever we were doing, and so people really cooperated.
Yeah. Yeah. Jim, I want to bring it back to your book, and one thing I'm really curious about is what did you learn after reading hundreds of stories about how people found love?
I think there was a lot of stories here, and let me tell you one that is not boy girl.
Hmm.
It's 1933, and a doctor and a nurse are delivering a baby in the foothills of a mountain in North Georgia. And the doctor tells the nurse, Ann, he says, Ann, this baby will be stillborn. The mother has been very ill, and the baby is not going to survive.
Mm.
So when the baby is delivered, he hands the baby to the nurse and says, Ann, put the baby on the table over there and then come back and help me. We've got to try and save this mother. So they worked for 2 hours, but the mother died. And the doctor says, Ann, you need to go home and get some rest. You put in a long day and you look exhausted. And she turned to go and she said, Doctor, this baby is still alive. He says, it can't be. He said, it only weighs 2 or 3 pounds. The lungs aren't developed. He said, it's not going to survive. She says, Doctor, I'm going to take this baby home. He says, Ann, you don't want to do that. You'll get attached to it and it's going to die and you're going to be devastated. Leave it on the table there. I'll take care of it. She
Wow.
said, I'm taking it home. And she grabbed the baby and went out the door. She lived a couple of blocks away with her sister Sarah and a father. And they had a small house and they had a potbelly wood burning stove. But they put the baby in a small tomato basket with a handle on it and wrapped in a blanket and put it next to the stove. And those two women cut wood and kept that fire going 24 hours a day to keep the baby warm. And they fed the baby with an eyedropper every 2 hours around the clock. And after 6 or 7 weeks, the baby has made some progress and was surviving. And the sister of the birth mother came up from the South Georgia and got the baby and took it home. And her name was Martha Marie Douglas, and they gave that little boy the name Robert Dean Douglas. And Marie and Claude Douglas had no children, but they put so much love into this child. And this was the depression, so it was expensive to raise it, especially a child with troubles.
Mhm.
But if you look at this woman's face in the picture in the book, you can see that she was absolutely loved. She had the most loving face you would ever see. But they raised this child. He graduated from high school. He went in the Navy and served as enlisted man in New London, Connecticut. Came back and became a successful businessman. This man is now 93 years old. And he told me when I asked him to write his story, I thought it would be about he and his wife because they have a wonderful marriage. But he shipped this in, and I've known him forever. I did not know this story. But he said, Jimmy, he said, this story's been in my heart for over 80 years. And there are four people here that took me and I was dead and they made me alive. He said, that's agape, the Greek word for love, which is love in one direction. It's just love that's given with absolutely nothing in return. And he said those people were incredible for what they did. They didn't, none of them had to do what they did, but they did it. And I'm here as a result of it.
Wow. Jim, I mean, yeah, as we wrap up today's episode, I mean, if you had just 1 minute to speak to every 20-year-old, every 40-year-old, every 60-year-old, every 80-year-old, what would you tell them?
I would say that everybody has a personality, but I would say work on your relationships, become better at it because relationships are the most important treasure of your life. Relationships are a treasure and work on it. Pursue and pursue relationships and be kind to others and learn how to be better and like you said, associate with people that have an aura about them that can help make you a better person because others can help you more than you realize. Just
Mhm.
being around other people, doing things with other people, you will become a better person. And I think if we all work on being better, maybe we can help the world in some way. And I don't get any royalties from my books.
Mhm.
Everything that we comes from these books goes to charity.
Mhm.
And this is it's kind of my donation to mankind. Is like I said, I just have so much to give, and I could never give back to this country a fraction of what it's given to me. And I
Yeah.
feel like I owe everything and owe everybody. And that's just what I'm doing. And I'm working on a new book called Close Calls. And we've got a file that we're getting some, and that's gonna be a fun book to do too.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Well, if I could leave everyone listening with a few ideas from today's conversation, one, I hear it's never too late to begin again. You know, Jim didn't begin writing until his 80s. Most of us still have far more runway than we think. Another is relationships aren't a reward for success. They're one of the greatest definitions of success. Third would be love rarely follows a timeline. The best things in life often arrive unexpectedly. Last two big takeaways. Every family has stories worth preserving. When we fail to tell them, future generations lose part of themselves. And the last one is a meaningful life isn't measured by accomplishments alone. It's measured by the people whose lives were better because you were in them. Now, Jim, if people want to pick up your newest book or previous books, where's the best place for them to go?
Zach, I think the best thing for people to do is to go to Google and type in Jim Paulk, and
Okay.
they will see my books listed there. They will see some podcasts that I've done, YouTubes. They will see something of my background and whatever. But I think that's easier than trying to remember how I found love or shaking up the world or swimming for our lives, the names of
Yeah.
my books. So if they just remember Jim Paulk, and of course they could go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble and type in James D. Paulk Jr. and they can find my books that way. But if you just remember Jim Paulk, because I'm a pretty simple person and a pretty simple name, and look there, and they can find out. And I love if they want to email me. I'd love to communicate with them. I spend hours every day on Facebook. I'm at Jim Paulk on Facebook, and I spend a lot of time with people. Now, this book, How I Found Love, has stories from 8 published authors. I feel so honored that they would give me stories and trust me to produce a book and put their names in the book. That's a great honor for me. So, but that's based on relationships that you create, that you get that kind of support and help. So
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jim. I love that. And we'll make sure that we have all relevant links in the show notes so nobody has to go search or dig too far. And, one of my favorite things about hosting this podcast is getting to sit down with people from completely different walks of life. Some teach us how to build businesses, some teach us how to build healthier bodies, some teach us how to become stronger leaders. And every once in a while, someone reminds us what all that's actually for. Yeah, today's conversation wasn't really about love. It was about people, about purpose, about remembering the quality of our lives will always be connected to the quality of our relationships. Now, Jim, thank you for sharing your wisdom with all of us. And if today's conversation was moved you, inspired you, I mean, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone you love. Until next time, keep growing, keep serving, keep investing in people, and remember, the greatest legacy you leave behind isn't what you built. It's how about who you built along the way. We'll see you next time. Jim, thank you for joining us today.